chances are if you're here, you're into some really boring stuff, but today we're going to be talking about wiring up O2 sensors to the Megasquirt 3 standalone ECU. So it's pretty straightforward, especially if you have a plug-and-play harness. There will be pre-terminated leads for you to tap into. Especially using Megasquirt, you are going to be required to use a controller, which in this form, you can use something like an AEM gauge, which is going to have the controller built in. And then for the other bank, since we're using a V8, we're going to be going with a standalone controller with no display. Another option you can do if you don't want to run two gauges or you don't want to shell out for a dual controller setup. Now, controllers are a good way to save money. You can display AFR through Megasquirt, whether you have a digital dash or something else, or you don't really want to look at it. Whatever the case may be, you can go with a display which has a controller built in, or you can go with a controller with no display. So those are our two options. So what I'm showing you right now is my O2 sensor controller. So that's an Innovate Wideband controller, LC2, I believe. So with these and Megasquirt, it's very simple to wire up. All you really have to do is give a 12-volt key on, so you always want it to be on. The same thing with an AEM gauge as well. You always want it to be on when the ECU is on. So the way the ECU is wired up is that it is key on. So the moment you turn on the car, it primes the fuel pump, whether it's first level ignition or your second level. At least on Megasquirt 3, how I have it wired up, you flip one switch and it turns on the ECU, it primes the fuel pump, and it sends power to the fuse block I have set up. So I have a custom chassis harness that does about 120 amps. It's all powered when Megasquirt is on. So your O2 sensors also need to be on. So anything that turns on your ECU also needs to control and turn on the O2 sensors. They have a preheater or a heater in them. That element inside the O2 sensor needs to be on when the car is running, or before the car is running, I'm sorry. So with a custom standalone harness, it's very simple to do. You're going to have, at least on Megasquirt, it's going to be a 0 to 5 volt input/output is what you're going to need on the Megasquirt and the controller. Now these are all signal, basically ways for the ECU to see where you're at as far as the air-fuel mixture. So we need to have these wired up correctly, so make sure you have pre-terminated lead for bank 1 and bank 2. On my harness, it's going to say O2 sensor in, and then it's going to say O2 number 2 for the right bank. Now, on an LS, bank number 1 is going to be the driver's side, and bank number 2 is the passenger side. So it's pretty easy. Make sure your O2 sensors are plumbed up. If you're doing a custom exhaust, they need to be sitting at least at a 30-degree position on the exhaust pipe, so they do not collect condensation and moisture. At least on my setup, I have it just placed pretty high up. You don't really need an angle, as long as it's off of the point of condensation is generally what you're looking for. Besides that, make sure you calibrate your O2 sensors and make sure your sensor grounds are on a nice, clean, isolated ground. Other than that, pretty easy.